The transport ship groaned under the strain of its failing engines as it hurtled through the atmosphere of an unknown planet. Sparks flew across the dimly lit cabin, and alarms blared so loudly that no one could hear their own screams. Ethan. Carter clung tightly to his older sister, Mia, his small hands gripping her arm with all the strength he could muster. The world outside the cracked viewport was a blur of fiery orange and deep green, a chaotic mix of clouds and strange, glowing vegetation. It was nothing like Earth. Their parents had been on the ship too, at least they were supposed to be, but Ethan hadn't seen them since the first explosion rocked the vessel. People were shouting, crying, running in every direction. In the chaos, Ethan and Mia had become separated from their mom and dad. Now, as the ship spiraled uncontrollably toward the surface, Ethan tried not to think about whether they were still alive. With a deafening crash, the ship hit the ground. Ethan felt himself thrown forward, his body slamming against the seat in front of him. Pain shot through his chest, but before he could cry out, everything went black. When Ethan woke up, the air smelled strange, sharp and metallic, like when you lick a battery by accident. He blinked open his eyes, squinting against the harsh sunlight filtering through cracks in the wreckage. Pieces of the ship lay scattered everywhere, twisted metal and shattered glass littering the landscape. The ground beneath him wasn't dirt or grass. It looked more like hardened clay, streaked with veins of glowing blue light. Mia was there beside him, coughing and covered in dust. Her face was pale, but she managed a weak smile when she saw Ethan stirring. "You okay?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Ethan nodded, though his head throbbed painfully. "Where are we?" he whispered, looking around at the alien terrain. Towering trees loomed nearby, their trunks thick and gnarled, covered in patches of what looked like glowing moss. Strange shapes darted between the branches overhead, too fast for Ethan to make out clearly. Every sound, the rustling leaves, the distant hum of insects, felt wrong somehow, like the planet itself was alive and watching. "We're somewhere bad," Mia said finally, her tone grim. She helped Ethan sit up, brushing bits of debris off his jacket. His clothes were torn and dirty, but other than a few scrapes, he seemed unharmed. That was something, at least. As they stumbled out of the wreckage, they found others who had survived the crash. There were maybe 20 people total, some injured worse than others. A man named Alex Parker, tall and broad-shouldered with kind eyes, was already organizing the group, checking for survivors and gathering supplies. He knelt beside Ethan and Mia, offering them each a bottle of water. "You two stick together," he told them firmly. "This place isn't safe." Ethan didn't need to be told twice. Even without understanding why, he could feel it in his bones. This planet was dangerous. The moment they stepped away from the wreckage, the air grew heavier, pressing down on them like a weight. The sky above shifted colors constantly, swirling between shades of purple and gray. And then there was the rain. It came suddenly, pouring down in sheets that sizzled and smoked when they touched the ground. Acid rain, someone called it. They had to take shelter quickly whenever it started, huddling under scraps of metal or inside the remains of the ship. But the rain wasn't the worst part. On their second day, Ethan and Mia learned just how deadly Korath-7 really was. They were helping Alex gather food, anything edible they could scavenge from the area. Ethan wandered a little farther than he should have, drawn by the sight of bright red berries hanging low on a bush. As he reached out to pick one, a loud screech pierced the air. Something big moved in the shadows, its silhouette jagged and unnatural. Ethan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. "Ethan!" Mia shouted from behind him, her voice sharp with panic. She grabbed his hand and yanked him backward just as a massive creature lunged out of the bushes. It looked like a cross between a wolf and a lizard, with rows of razor-sharp teeth and skin that shimmered like oil. Its eyes glowed yellow, locking onto Ethan with terrifying precision. Alex appeared moments later, wielding a makeshift spear. He drove the creature back with a series of quick jabs, giving Ethan and Mia time to scramble away. When the beast finally retreated into the forest, Alex turned to them, breathing hard. "Stay close next time," he said sternly. "And don't wander off alone. Those things hunt by sound. You're lucky it didn't catch you." Ethan nodded, trembling. He wanted to say thank you, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he stayed silent, clinging to Mia's side as they returned to camp. Back among the survivors, tensions were high. Food was scarce and tempers flared easily. Some people argued over ration sizes, while others muttered about finding a way to leave the planet. But leaving wasn't easy, not when none of their communication devices worked, and the only working ship parts were buried under tons of rubble. Through it all, Ethan noticed something strange about himself. While most of the adults struggled to adjust to life on Korath 7, he seemed to adapt almost instinctively. He learned which plants were safe to eat after watching birds peck at them. He figured out how to climb the slippery fungal trees to reach fruit hidden high above, and he discovered that if he mimicked the chirping sounds of certain harmless creatures, the predators would ignore him completely. No one else seemed to notice or care at first. Most of the survivors were too focused on survival to pay attention to an 8-year-old boy. But Mia did. She watched her little brother closely, marveling at how quickly he was learning. Where she hesitated, afraid of making a mistake, Ethan acted boldly, trusting his instincts even when logic suggested caution. One evening, as the group huddled around a small fire, Mia pulled Ethan aside. "You're doing great," she said, softly ruffling his hair. "Better than anyone expected." Ethan shrugged, embarrassed. "I'm just trying to help." "I know," Mia replied, her voice serious now. "But promise me one thing. If anything happens to me, you'll keep going. You'll survive." Ethan frowned, shaking his head. "Nothing's gonna happen to you," he insisted. "We're sticking together, remember?" Mia smiled sadly, pulling him into a tight hug. "Yeah," she murmured. "We're sticking together." Little did they know their bond, and Ethan's unique ability to thrive in the face of danger, would soon become the key to their survival on this alien Deathworld. Days passed, and life on Korath 7 grew harder. The survivors were running low on food, and the acid rain made it nearly impossible to gather supplies without risking burns. Tempers flared as people argued over who should get the last piece of dried fruit or the final sip of water. Ethan and Mia stayed close to Alex Parker, the man who had saved Ethan from the predator. Alex was calm and fair, always trying to keep the group together, but even he couldn't stop the growing tension. Ethan noticed that some of the adults treated him differently now. They didn't see him as just a scared little boy anymore. Instead, they watched him carefully, almost suspiciously. It wasn't just because he was small and quiet. It was because he seemed to know things they didn't. He could find safe plants to eat when others couldn't. He moved quietly through the forest, avoiding predators that would have easily spotted someone clumsier, and he always came back to camp with something useful, whether it was a handful of edible berries or a sharp stick perfect for making tools. One person, however, didn't trust Ethan at all. His name was Ryan Cole, a grumpy mechanic with greasy hands and a permanent scowl. Ryan was tall and muscular, with arms covered in faded tattoos. He had been one of the loudest voices during arguments about ration sizes, always demanding more for himself. Whenever Ethan returned to camp with food or supplies, Ryan glared at him like he'd done something wrong. "He's hiding something," Ryan muttered one evening while Ethan sat by the fire cleaning mud off his shoes. "That kid knows more than he's letting on." Mia bristled at the comment. "He's just trying to help," she snapped, glaring at Ryan. "If you don't like it, maybe you should go out there yourself instead of sitting around complaining." Ryan narrowed his eyes but didn't respond. Instead, he turned away, muttering under his breath. Ethan pretended not to hear any of it. He kept his head down, focusing on sharpening a stick with a shard of broken glass. He didn't want trouble, especially not with someone like Ryan. Despite the tension, Ethan continued to explore the alien forest every chance he got. Mia worried about him, of course. She begged him not to go too far. But she also knew how important it was for the group to have food. So she let him go, reminding him to stay alert and come back before dark. On one of these trips, Ethan discovered something incredible. Deep in the forest, past the glowing trees and pools of bubbling liquid, he found a clearing unlike anything he'd seen before. In the center stood a strange structure half buried in vines and moss. It looked ancient, its surface cracked and weathered, but parts of it still shimmered faintly with blue light. Symbols etched into the walls glowed softly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Ethan approached cautiously, his heart racing. The structure felt alive, somehow. As he reached out to touch one of the glowing symbols, a warm sensation spread through his fingers, like sunlight on his skin. For a moment he thought he heard whispers, soft, indistinct voices speaking in a language he didn't understand. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the feeling disappeared. Terrified but fascinated, Ethan backed away slowly. He wanted to tell someone what he'd found, but he hesitated. What if they didn't believe him, or worse, what if they thought he was lying? When he returned to camp later that day, Mia immediately noticed something was different. "What happened?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Ethan hesitated, then decided to tell her everything. He described the structure, the glowing symbols, and the strange warmth he'd felt when he touched them. To his relief, Mia didn't laugh or call him crazy. Instead, her eyes widened with curiosity. "We need to check it out," she said firmly. "If it's real, it could be important." The next morning, Mia and Ethan set out early, retracing Ethan's steps to the clearing. When they arrived, Mia stared at the structure in awe. "This is unbelievable," she whispered, running her fingers over the glowing symbols. Like Ethan, she felt warmth radiating from the surface, though it wasn't quite as strong for her. As they explored further, they realized the structure was much bigger than it appeared from the outside. A narrow doorway led into a dark chamber filled with dust and debris. Strange machines lined the walls, their surfaces covered in the same glowing symbols. In the center of the room stood a pedestal with a flat circular panel that hummed softly. When touched, "It's like technology," Mia murmured, her voice trembling with excitement. "But way more advanced than anything we've ever seen." Ethan nodded, though he didn't fully understand what she meant. All he knew was that the structure felt special, like it had been waiting for them to find it. When they returned to camp, news of their discovery spread quickly. At first, the other survivors were skeptical. "A kid found this?" Ryan sneered, crossing his arms. "Sounds like a fairy tale to me." But Alex believed them. "Even if it's a long shot, we can't ignore it," he said. "If there's a chance this thing can help us get off this planet, we owe it to ourselves to try." Reluctantly, the group agreed to investigate further. Over the next few days, they worked together to clear away the vines and debris covering the structure. Ethan helped wherever he could, climbing into tight spaces to remove rubble or handing tools to the adults. He felt proud to be part of the team, even if Ryan still glared at him whenever their paths crossed. As they uncovered more of the structure, strange things began to happen. The glowing symbols brightened whenever Ethan was nearby, as if responding to his presence. Machines that had been silent for centuries suddenly hummed to life, projecting faint images onto the walls. One showed a map of the galaxy, another displayed scenes of humanoid figures working together in fields and cities. No one understood exactly what the images meant, but they gave everyone hope. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't alone after all. But not everyone shared this optimism. Ryan grew increasingly agitated, convinced the structure was cursed. "We're messing with things we don't understand," he warned, pacing back and forth. "Mark my words, this is going to end badly." His warnings fell on deaf ears. Most of the survivors were too focused on unlocking the secrets of the structure to listen to him. Even Mia brushed off his concerns, telling him he was being paranoid. Ethan, however, couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan might be right. Every time he touched the glowing symbols, he saw flashes of strange visions, images of destruction, of skies filled with smoke and rivers running black. He didn't tell anyone about these dreams, afraid they'd think he was losing his mind. But deep down, he wondered if the structure held answers or dangers they weren't prepared for. Despite his fears, Ethan pressed on. He spent hours studying the symbols, trying to decipher their meaning. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. Some represented food and shelter, others symbolized danger or warning. With Mia's help, he started mapping out the connections, hoping to piece together a message. Meanwhile, tensions among the group continued to rise. Arguments broke out over who should lead the effort to activate the structure. Alex remained the unofficial leader, but Ryan challenged him at every turn, accusing him of favoritism and incompetence. The stress took its toll on everyone, leaving them exhausted and on edge. Through it all, Ethan stayed focused. He didn't care about the arguments or the power struggles. All he cared about was finding a way to survive, to protect his sister and the others who had become like family to him. If the structure held the key to their escape, he was determined to unlock it, no matter what it cost. And so, as the days turned into weeks, Ethan and the survivors pushed forward, driven by hope, fear, and the unshakable belief that against all odds, they might yet find a way home. The structure became the center of everyone's attention. Day after day, the survivors worked tirelessly to uncover its secrets. Ethan spent most of his time inside, tracing the glowing symbols with his fingers and trying to make sense of their patterns. The others watched him closely, some with admiration, others with suspicion. Ryan Cole was always nearby, his arms crossed and his lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't trust Ethan or the structure, and he wasn't shy about saying so. "This is a waste of time," Ryan muttered one afternoon, as Ethan knelt beside the pedestal in the central chamber. "We should be fixing the ship, not playing around with alien junk." Alex Parker, who stood nearby holding a piece of broken machinery, sighed. "If we fix the ship but don't have a way to call for help, what good does it do us? This place could save us." Ryan snorted. "Or get us all killed." Ethan ignored them both. He was too focused on the pedestal. The flat panel in the center hummed softly whenever he touched it, and faint lines of light spread across its surface like cracks in ice. He pressed his palms against it, feeling warmth radiate through his hands. For a moment, the entire room lit up, bathing the walls in a soft blue glow. Everyone froze, staring in awe. "What did you do?" Mia asked, stepping closer. Her voice was quiet, almost reverent. I don't know," Ethan admitted, pulling his hands away. The glow faded, leaving the room dim once more. "It just responded." "Well, that's progress," Alex said, clapping Ethan on the shoulder. "Keep at it, kid. You're onto something." Ryan rolled his eyes but didn't argue. Instead, he turned and walked out of the chamber, muttering under his breath. Ethan felt a pang of guilt. Part of him wanted to prove Ryan wrong, but another part wondered if maybe the man had a point. What if they were tampering with something dangerous? Still, Ethan couldn't stop now. Each time he interacted with the structure, he learned something new. The glowing symbols weren't random. They told stories. Some depicted lush fields and clear skies, while others showed barren wastelands and shadowy figures fleeing in terror. Ethan began piecing together fragments of the planet's history. Long ago, Korath 7 had been a thriving world, home to an advanced civilization. But something had gone terribly wrong, something that turned paradise into a death world. Mia noticed how absorbed Ethan became when studying the symbols. "You're really good at this," she said one evening as they sat outside the structure, sharing a meal of roasted roots and dried meat. "Better than anyone else here." Ethan shrugged modestly. "I just feel like I understand it, like it's talking to me." Mia frowned slightly, her brow furrowing. "Do you think it's safe?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "But we don't have much choice, do we?" She nodded reluctantly. "Just promise me you'll be careful." "I will," Ethan promised. And he meant it, at least as much as he could. Every instinct told him the structure was important, but every vision of destruction reminded him of the risks. As the days passed, the group made slow but steady progress. They managed to repair parts of the structure's internal systems, though none of them truly understood how it worked. The pedestal remained the biggest mystery. No matter how many times Ethan touched it or tried to activate it, nothing significant happened, just brief flashes of light and strange whispers that no one else seemed to hear. Then one night everything changed. Ethan woke suddenly, his heart pounding. The air felt heavy, charged with static electricity. He glanced around the makeshift shelter he shared with Mia. expecting to see someone shaking him awake. But no one was there. Slowly, he sat up, listening intently. A faint, humming sound echoed in the distance, coming from the direction of the structure. Without waking Mia, Ethan slipped out of the shelter and crept toward the source of the noise. The forest was eerily quiet, the usual chirps and rustles replaced by an unnatural stillness. As he approached the clearing, he saw the structure glowing brightly, its symbols pulsing in rhythm with the hum. It looked alive, like it was breathing. Ethan hesitated at the edge of the clearing, unsure whether to go closer. Then he heard a voice, a real voice, not the whispers he'd imagined before. It was soft and melodic, speaking in a language he didn't recognize. Despite the unfamiliar words, he understood the tone. Calm, reassuring, almost inviting. Summoning his courage, Ethan stepped forward. The moment he entered the clearing, the glowing symbols flared brighter, and the voice grew louder. Images flooded his mind. Scenes of towering cities, bustling markets, and families laughing together. But then the vision shifted, showing fire raining from the sky and rivers drying up. The ground cracked open, swallowing everything in its path. Ethan staggered backward, clutching his head. The images stopped abruptly, leaving him gasping for breath. When he opened his eyes, the structure was dark again, silent and still. "Ethan!" Mia's voice broke through the haze. She ran toward him, her face pale with worry. "What are you doing out here? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Ethan said quickly, though his voice trembled. I heard something." Mia frowned, glancing at the structure. "This place is messing with your head. We need to tell Alex." But Ethan shook his head. "No, wait. I think it's trying to show me something, to warn us." Before Mia could respond, a loud crash echoed through the forest. Both siblings froze, turning toward the sound. Something big was moving nearby, snapping branches and sending waves of vibrations through the ground. Panic surged through Ethan as he realized what it was, a predator, drawn by the light and noise from the structure. "We need to hide," Mia whispered urgently, grabbing Ethan's hand. They ducked behind a thick tree trunk just as the creature emerged from the shadows. It was massive, with 6 legs and rows of jagged teeth lining its mouth. Its skin shimmered like oil, blending seamlessly with the darkness. The beast sniffed the air, its glowing yellow eyes scanning the area. Ethan held his breath, praying it wouldn't find them. But then the structure lit up again, the symbols flashing erratically. The creature let out a deafening roar and charged straight toward the clearing. "Run!" Mia shouted, pulling Ethan away. They sprinted through the forest, dodging trees and leaping over roots. Behind them, the creature smashed into the structure, tearing apart the vines and debris covering it. The ground shook violently, and the air filled with the sound of collapsing stone. When they finally reached camp, the other survivors were already awake, alarmed by the commotion. Alex grabbed Ethan by the shoulders, his expression tense. "What happened?" "The structure, it lit up," Ethan explained breathlessly, "and then the predator came." Ryan scowled. "Told you this was a bad idea." Alex ignored him, focusing on Ethan. "Did it show you anything? Anything at all?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "It showed me the past. This planet used to be beautiful, but something destroyed it. I think it's warning us." The group fell silent, processing his words. Finally, Alex spoke. "If that thing knows what happened here, it might also know how to help us leave. We can't give up now." Ryan stormed off, muttering curses under his breath. Most of the others stayed behind, discussing what to do next. Mia kept close to Ethan, her arm protectively around his shoulders. "You scared me back there," she said quietly. "Don't ever run off like that again." "I won't," Ethan promised, though he wasn't sure he meant it. Something about the structure called to him, pulling him back despite the danger. Over the next few days, the survivors worked even harder to stabilize the structure. They reinforced its outer walls and cleared away more debris, hoping to prevent another attack. Ethan continued studying the symbols, determined to unlock their meaning. With each passing hour, He grew more confident in his ability to decipher them. It was as if the structure trusted him, guiding him step by step. But Ryan's hostility only increased. He accused Ethan of hoarding information, claiming the boy knew more than he let on. Tensions boiled over during a heated argument one evening. "You think you're special, don't you?" Ryan spat, pointing a finger at Ethan. "Little kid finds shiny rocks and suddenly he's the hero." "That's enough," Alex snapped, stepping between them. "Ethan's doing more for this group than you ever have." Ryan clenched his fists, his face red with anger. "Fine. But when this thing blows up in our faces, don't say I didn't warn you." He stalked off, leaving the group in uneasy silence. Ethan felt a lump in his throat but forced himself to stay calm. He couldn't afford to let Ryan's words get to him, not when so much depended on what they did next. By the end of the week, they had uncovered enough of the structure to attempt activating it fully. The pedestal in the central chamber now glowed steadily, responding to Ethan's touch. Symbols danced across its surface, forming patterns that seemed to shift and change, depending on how he interacted with them. "It's ready," Ethan announced one morning, his voice trembling with excitement and fear. "I think we can use it to send a signal." The group gathered around, their faces a mix of hope and apprehension. Alex placed a reassuring hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You've done amazing work, kid. Let's finish this." As Ethan reached out to activate the pedestal, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. Whether it led to salvation or disaster, only time would tell. The moment Ethan touched the pedestal, the room came alive. The glowing symbols on the walls brightened, pulsing in rhythm with a low hum that filled the chamber. Lines of light spread across the floor, connecting intricate patterns that seemed to stretch endlessly. Everyone held their breath, watching as the pedestal's surface lit up with a map of stars and planets. It was breathtaking, a galaxy laid out before them, vast and mysterious. "This is it," Alex whispered, his voice full of awe. "This could be our way out." Ethan felt a surge of pride, but also fear. He had spent days deciphering the symbols and learning how to interact with the structure, but now that they were finally using it, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The visions he'd seen, the destruction, the warnings, they lingered in the back of his mind like shadows. Mia squeezed his hand reassuringly. "You're doing great," she said softly. "Just focus." With a deep breath, Ethan pressed harder on the pedestal. The map shifted, zooming in on their location, a tiny dot labeled with strange alien characters. Then slowly, the device began scanning nearby systems, searching for signs of life or habitable worlds. Each second felt like an eternity as the group waited anxiously. Ryan Cole stood at the edge of the crowd, arms crossed and jaw tight. His distrust hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown stronger. "What if this thing doesn't work?" he grumbled loud enough for everyone to hear. "We've wasted all our time on this nonsense instead of fixing the ship." "We wouldn't even have a signal to send without this," Alex shot back, his patience wearing thin. "So unless you've got a better idea, shut up and let us finish." Ryan glared but didn't argue further. Instead, he turned away, muttering under his breath. Ethan tried not to let Ryan's negativity get to him. He focused on the task ahead, hoping against hope that the structure would find what they needed. Finally, after what felt like hours, the map stopped moving. A single star blinked brighter than the rest, surrounded by smaller dots representing planets. One of them glowed faintly green, marked with a symbol Ethan recognized. It meant safe. His heart leapt with excitement. "That's it." "Mia," exclaimed, pointing at the glowing planet. "That has to be where we go." Alex nodded, relief washing over his face. "Good job, Ethan. You did it." But just as the group began celebrating, the structure started making strange noises, deep, grinding sounds that echoed through the chamber. The glowing symbols flickered erratically, and the pedestal grew hotter under Ethan's hands. He pulled back instinctively, alarmed. "What's happening?" someone shouted. "I don't know," Ethan replied, his voice trembling. "It wasn't doing this before." The ground beneath them shook violently, sending dust and debris raining down from the ceiling. People stumbled, trying to keep their balance. Ryan cursed loudly, grabbing onto a nearby wall for support. "I knew this was a bad idea," he yelled over the noise. "We need to get out of here." "No," Alex countered firmly. "We can't leave now. We're so close." Ethan hesitated, torn between fear and determination. He glanced at Mia, who gave him an encouraging nod. Taking a step forward, he placed his hands back on the pedestal, ignoring the heat radiating from its surface. The shaking intensified, but the map stabilized again, locking onto the green planet. "It's working," Ethan called out. "We just need to activate the signal." "How do we do that?" Alex asked urgently. Ethan studied the pedestal carefully, his mind racing. The glowing lines formed a sequence almost like instructions. Following his instincts, he pressed certain points in order, mimicking the pattern he'd seen earlier. With each touch, the hum grew louder until suddenly a beam of light shot upward from the center of the pedestal, piercing through the roof of the structure and into the sky. For a moment, there was silence. Everyone stared in stunned disbelief as the light faded, leaving behind a faint glow around the pedestal. Then, cheers erupted throughout the chamber. They had done it. They had sent a signal. But their celebration was short-lived. A sharp crack echoed through the room, followed by another violent tremor. The walls of the structure groaned ominously, chunks of stone breaking loose and crashing to the ground. Panic set in as people scrambled toward the exit. Ryan shoved past others, shouting for them to hurry. "Ethan, come on," Mia cried, grabbing his arm. Ethan hesitated, looking back at the pedestal. Part of him wanted to stay to make sure the signal stayed active. But the structure was collapsing around them, and staying any longer would mean certain death. "Let's go," Alex urged, ushering the group outside. They barely made it out in time. As soon as they reached the clearing, the entrance collapsed behind them, sealing off the chamber completely. Dust filled the air, choking them as they stumbled away from the ruins. When the shaking finally stopped, the survivors stood in stunned silence, staring at what remained of the structure. "Well," Ryan muttered bitterly, brushing dirt off his clothes. "There goes your miracle machine." "It worked," Ethan insisted, his voice firm despite the chaos. "The signal is out there. Someone will find us." Alex nodded, placing a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "He's right. We've done everything we can. Now we wait." Waiting proved harder than anyone expected. Days turned into weeks, and the initial excitement of sending the signal faded into restless uncertainty. Supplies dwindled, and the constant threat of predators kept everyone on edge. Tempers flared more often, especially between Alex and Ryan, whose arguments became increasingly heated. "You put too much faith in that kid," Ryan snapped one evening during a tense discussion about ration sizes. "If we'd focused on repairing the ship, we might actually have a chance of leaving this rock. And if we'd ignored the structure, we'd still be stranded with no way to call for help," Alex shot back. "Face it, Ryan, you're just mad because Ethan figured out something none of us could." Ryan clenched his fists, glaring at both Alex and Ethan. "Don't act like he's some kind of hero. He's just a kid who got lucky." Before Alex could respond, Ethan stepped forward, surprising everyone. "I didn't do it alone," he said quietly but firmly. "Everyone helped, and if you spent less time complaining and more time working, maybe you'd see that." The group fell silent, shocked by Ethan's boldness. Ryan's face reddened with anger, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he stormed off, disappearing into the forest. Despite the tension, Ethan's words seemed to strengthen the resolve of the others. Slowly, they began pulling together, focusing on survival while they waited for rescue. Ethan continued exploring the area, bringing back food and useful materials whenever he could. His knack for finding safe paths and avoiding danger earned him respect, even from those who had doubted him at first. One day, while scavenging near the edge of the forest, Ethan discovered something unexpected, a patch of plants unlike any he'd seen before. Their leaves shimmered with a metallic sheen and tiny pods hung from their stems. Curious, Ethan picked one and cracked it open, revealing a sticky, golden liquid inside. It smelled sweet, almost like honey. When he brought it back to camp, Mia examined it cautiously. "Do you think it's safe to eat?" she asked, wrinkling her nose. I'm not sure, Ethan admitted. But it smells good. Alex suggested testing it on a small fire first to see if it reacted badly. To everyone's relief, the liquid didn't burn or release harmful fumes. Encouraged, they decided to try eating a tiny amount. The taste was rich and sugary, providing a much-needed energy boost. This could be a game changer, Alex said, smiling for the first time in days. Good find, Ethan. As the days passed, Ethan noticed subtle changes in himself. He felt stronger, faster, and more alert than ever before. At first he thought it was just the result of living on Korath 7, where every day was a test of survival. But then he realized something else. He could hear things others couldn't. Faint whispers carried on the wind, distant growls of predators hidden in the forest. It was as though his senses were becoming sharper, almost superhuman. Mia noticed too. "You've been different lately," she said one evening as they sat by the fire. "Is everything okay?" Ethan hesitated, unsure how to explain what he was experiencing. I think the structure changed me somehow. Ever since I touched it, I've felt different." Mia frowned, concern etched on her face. "Different how?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "But it's not bad. It's like I belong here in a way." Mia opened her mouth to respond. But before she could speak, a shout rang out from the other side of camp. Everyone sprang to their feet, hearts pounding. Through the trees they saw lights, bright, artificial lights, moving steadily closer. "They found us," Alex breathed, his voice filled with disbelief and joy. For the first time in months, hope surged through the group. They gathered their belongings quickly, preparing to meet their rescuers. As the lights drew nearer, Ethan felt a mix of emotions: relief, excitement, and a strange pang of sadness. Leaving Korath 7 meant saying goodbye to the place that had tested him, shaped him, and ultimately saved him. But as he looked around at the faces of the people he'd fought alongside, he knew one thing for certain: no matter where they went, next they would carry the lessons of this alien world with them forever. The lights grew brighter as the rescue ship descended, its engines roaring like thunder. The survivors gathered in the clearing, shielding their eyes from the glare and waving frantically to get the attention of the crew. Ethan stood beside Mia, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nervousness. He had dreamed of this moment for so long, but now that it was here, he felt unsure. Would the rescuers understand what they had been through? Would they believe the stories about the structure and the strange changes Ethan had noticed in himself? As the ship touched down, a ramp extended and figures in sleek uniforms stepped out. They carried weapons but kept them lowered, scanning the group cautiously. One of them, a tall woman with short brown hair and a commanding presence, approached. "Alex first, you're the leader?" she asked, her tone brisk but not unkind. Alex shook his head. "Not really. We've just been trying to survive." The woman nodded, glancing around at the weary faces. "We picked up your signal days ago," she explained. "It took us longer than expected to reach you. This planet, it's dangerous." "You don't know the half of it," Ryan muttered from the back of the group, earning a few glares. Ignoring him, the woman turned her attention to Ethan. There was something in her gaze, curiosity, maybe even recognition. "You're the one who activated the signal?" Ethan hesitated, feeling all eyes on him. I guess so. I mean, I figured out how to use the structure." "The structure?" the woman repeated, her brow furrowing. "What exactly is it?" "It's hard to explain," Mia interjected quickly, stepping forward to shield Ethan. "It's alien technology. It helped us send the signal, but it collapsed after that." The woman studied them for a moment, then nodded. "We'll need to hear the full story once we're aboard. For now, let's get you off this rock." Relief washed over the group as they boarded the ship. Inside, the air was cool and clean, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat and metallic tang of Korath 7. Ethan sat near a window, watching as the planet shrank into the distance. Its glowing forests and jagged mountains faded into darkness, replaced by the endless expanse of stars. For the first time in months, he felt safe, but also strangely empty. as if part of him had been left behind. Once everyone was settled, the crew began asking questions. They wanted to know everything: how the crash happened, what life on Korath 7 had been like, and most importantly, how Ethan had managed to activate the alien device. At first, Ethan struggled to explain. The symbols, the visions, the strange connection he felt, it all sounded too unbelievable. But the woman listening to him didn't dismiss his words. Instead, she leaned closer, her expression growing more intense. "This isn't the first time we've encountered technology like this," she admitted quietly. "There are ruins scattered across the galaxy, remnants of an ancient civilization. Some say they were wiped out by their own hubris, others by forces beyond their control. But no one has ever been able to interact with their machines, not like you did." Ethan frowned, feeling a chill run down his spine. "What does that mean? Why me?" The woman hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's possible you have some kind of compatibility with their technology. Or maybe—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "We'll need to run tests to be sure." Tests. The word made Ethan uneasy. He glanced at Mia, who gave him a reassuring smile. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together," she whispered. Over the next few days, Ethan underwent a series of examinations. Doctors poked and prodded him, running scans and taking samples. They tested his reflexes, his strength, even his hearing and vision. To their astonishment, they discovered that Ethan's senses were far sharper than those of an average human. His body seemed to heal faster, and his mind processed information at an incredible speed. "It's almost like the structure altered you," one of the doctors remarked during a debriefing session. But why? And how? Ethan didn't have answers, only more questions. Was he still human? Would he ever feel normal again? Meanwhile, tensions among the survivors began to resurface. Ryan in particular couldn't let go of his resentment. "They're treating him like some kind of experiment," he grumbled during a meal. "What happens when they decide he's more trouble than he's worth?" "Stop it," Mia snapped, slamming her cup down on the table. "Ethan saved us. Without him, we'd still be stuck on that planet," Ryan sneered. "Yeah, because he broke some alien toy and got lucky. Doesn't mean he deserves special treatment." Before Mia could respond, Alex intervened. "Enough. We've been through enough without turning on each other again. Ethan did what none of us could. That's something to respect, not resent." Ryan muttered under his breath but didn't argue further. Still, his words lingered in Ethan's mind, planting seeds of doubt. What if the crew decided he was too different to keep around? What if they sent him away, or worse? Despite these fears, Ethan tried to stay positive. The ship was heading toward a nearby space station where the survivors would receive medical care and assistance in contacting their families. Along the way, Ethan spent hours staring out the windows, marveling at the beauty of the galaxy. He had always loved looking at the stars back on Earth, but seeing them up close was something else entirely. Each pinprick of light held the promise of new worlds, new possibilities. One evening, as the ship drifted past a nebula painted in shades of purple and gold, the woman who had spoken to Ethan earlier joined him. Her name was Captain Harper, and though she carried herself with authority, there was kindness in her eyes. "How are you holding up?" she asked, leaning against the wall beside him. Ethan shrugged. "Okay, I guess. Just thinking." "About Korath 7? He nodded. "It was awful, but it changed me. I don't think I'll ever forget it." Harper smiled faintly. "That planet tested you in ways most people will never experience. You survived against impossible odds. That says something about you, Ethan." "But what if I'm not normal anymore?" he asked softly. "What if I'm not supposed to leave?" Harper placed a hand on his shoulder. "Normal is overrated. Sometimes being different is exactly what makes you special. Whatever happens next, remember that." Her words comforted him, but they didn't erase his doubts completely. As the space station came into view, a massive, ring-shaped structure, orbiting a distant star, Ethan felt a knot tighten in his stomach. What awaited them there? Would they find safety or would new challenges arise? When the ship docked, the survivors disembarked cautiously. The station buzzed with activity, its corridors filled with people rushing to and fro. Medical teams greeted them immediately, leading them to a large chamber where they could rest and recover. Ethan stayed close to Mia, clinging to her hand, like he had during the early days on Korath 7. To their surprise, news of their ordeal had already spread. Reporters and officials crowded the station, eager to hear their story. Cameras flashed, and microphones were thrust into their faces. Ethan shrank back, overwhelmed by the attention, but Mia stepped forward, speaking on behalf of the group. "We survived thanks to teamwork, and to my brother," she said firmly, pulling Ethan beside her. "He may be young, but he's braver, and smarter than anyone gives him credit for. Don't underestimate him." The crowd fell silent, impressed by her conviction. For the first time, Ethan felt a flicker of pride instead of fear. Maybe he didn't have all the answers, but he had done something remarkable. And whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew he wouldn't face them alone. As the days passed, plans were made to reunite the survivors with their families. Ethan and Mia learned that their parents hadn't survived the crash, a truth that hit them hard, but also strengthened their bond. Together, they vowed to honor their memory by living fully, no matter where life took them. Captain Harper visited them one last time before departing. "You've got a bright future ahead of you, Ethan," she said with a warm smile. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Ethan nodded, feeling a spark of hope ignite within him. Korath 7 had taken so much from him, but it had also given him something invaluable: resilience, courage, and a sense of purpose. Against all odds, he had flourished on an alien Deathworld, and now he was ready to take on the galaxy. Life on the space station was a whirlwind of activity. The survivors were given comfortable quarters, access to medical care, and plenty of food, luxuries they hadn't experienced in months. For Ethan, it felt surreal. After weeks of surviving, on scraps and scavenging for every meal, he now had plates piled high with fresh fruits, vegetables, and meats he'd never even seen before. But despite the comforts, something about the station felt off. It wasn't home. The attention from reporters and officials didn't help. Every day brought new interviews, questions about Korath 7, and endless curiosity about how Ethan had managed to activate the alien structure. Some treated him like a hero. Others looked at him like he was some kind of freak. Mia stayed by his side through it all, shielding him from the worst of it and speaking up whenever someone crossed the line. "You're not just a story to be told," she reminded him one evening as they sat together in their shared quarters. "You're my brother, and you did something incredible. Don't let anyone make you forget that." Ethan nodded, though he still struggled with the weight of everyone's expectations. He didn't feel like a hero, just a kid who had done what he thought was right. Still, he tried to stay positive, focusing on the fact that they were safe now, safe and alive. But safety didn't mean peace. As the days passed, Ethan began noticing strange things happening around the station. Lights flickered without warning, machines malfunctioned, and whispers echoed through empty hallways. At first he thought it was his imagination, a lingering effect of the visions he'd experienced on Korath 7. But then other people started mentioning it too. "Did you hear that?" one of the survivors asked during breakfast one morning. "It sounded like voices." Another shook their head. "Probably just the station settling. This place is old." Ethan didn't say anything, but he knew better. The whispers weren't random. They were familiar, almost comforting in a way. They reminded him of the structure, of the glowing symbols and the warmth he'd felt when he touched them. It was as if part of Korath 7 had followed him here. Captain Harper noticed the changes too. She visited Ethan frequently, asking about his experiences and observing his behavior. One afternoon, she pulled him aside after another round of tests. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her tone serious. "We've been monitoring your brain activity since we picked you up. There's a signal coming from you. It matches the frequency of the structure." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" "It means the connection isn't gone," Harper explained. Whatever happened on Korath 7, it's still with you. You're carrying part of that technology inside you. Ethan stared at her, his mind racing. Is that bad? I don't know yet, Harper admitted, but we can't ignore it. If this signal is active, it could attract attention from forces we don't understand. Before Ethan could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Red lights flashed, and panicked shouts filled the air. People ran in every direction, searching for answers. Harper grabbed Ethan's arm, pulling him toward a secure area. What's happening? Ethan asked, his voice trembling. We're under attack, Harper replied grimly, and I think it's connected to you. As they reached the control room, chaos reigned. Screens displayed images of ships approaching the station, ships unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Their designs were jagged and asymmetrical, glowing, with the same eerie blue light as the structure. On one monitor, a message appeared in alien characters, pulsing rhythmically. They're broadcasting a signal, a technician shouted. It's locking onto something or someone. Harper turned to Ethan, her expression grave. They're here for you. Ethan's heart sank. Why? Because you interacted with their technology, Harper said. Whoever built the structure left behind more than ruins. They left guardians, and those guardians want what's theirs. Mia burst into the room, breathless and wide-eyed. What's going on? What's happening? They're after Ethan, Harper explained quickly. We need to get him out of here. No, Ethan protested, stepping back. I won't run, not again. If they want me, maybe I can talk to them. You don't understand, Harper snapped. These aren't negotiators, they're hunters. Before anyone could stop him, Ethan broke free and ran toward the nearest exit. He didn't know where he was going, only that he couldn't let the attackers hurt the people who had trusted him. As he moved through the corridors, the whispers grew louder, guiding him like a compass. They led him to an observation deck overlooking the docking bay, where the alien ships hovered menacingly. One of the vessels extended a long, claw-like appendage reaching toward the station. A beam of light shot out, scanning the area. Ethan felt a pull, like an invisible thread tugging at his chest. The signal within him responded, syncing with the invader's frequency. For a moment, everything went silent. Then, the whispers returned. Louder, this time clearer. Ethan closed his eyes, letting them wash over him. Images flooded his mind. Towering cities, vast oceans, and skies filled with stars. Then came the destruction. The fire, the ash, the screams. And finally, a plea. A desperate cry for help. They're not here to hurt us, Ethan realized aloud. They're lost, like we were. Behind him, Mia and Harper entered the room, followed by Alex and several others. Ethan, come back, Mia called, her voice breaking. Please. Ethan ignored her, stepping closer to the window. He raised his hand, pressing it against the glass. The alien ship paused, its movements uncertain. Slowly, the claw retracted and the beam of light shifted, focusing on Ethan. They're listening, he whispered. They understand. Harper stepped forward, her weapon drawn. Ethan, don't do this. We don't know what they'll do to you. Yes, we do, Ethan replied calmly. They're trying to protect what's left of their world, just like we were. With that, he turned back to the window. The light enveloped him, lifting him off the ground. For a brief moment, he felt weightless, suspended between worlds. Then everything went black. When Ethan woke up, he was no longer on the station. He stood in a vast chamber, surrounded by glowing symbols that pulsed with life. Before him loomed a massive figure, humanoid but unmistakably alien, its body shimmering like liquid metal. Its eyes glowed with the same blue light, and its presence radiated power. You are the key, the figure said, its voice resonating like a chorus. The bridge between worlds. Ethan swallowed hard. What do you want from me? To restore balance, the figure replied. Your actions awakened our systems, now you must guide us to ensure no harm comes to either of our kinds. Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. Could he really take on such a responsibility? But as he looked into the alien's glowing eyes, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything he'd ever known. "I'll help you," he said finally, "but only if you promise to leave my friends alone." The figure inclined its head. "We shall honor your request. Together, we will rebuild." Back on the station, the survivors watched in stunned silence as the alien ships withdrew, disappearing into the void. Harper lowered her weapon, her face pale with shock. Mia collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "He's gone," she whispered. "He sacrificed himself. For all of us." Alex placed a hand on her shoulder. "He's still out there, Mia. Wherever he is, he's doing what he always does, protecting us." Far away, aboard the alien vessel, Ethan stood tall, ready to face whatever lay ahead. He had survived Korath 7, adapted to its challenges, and now carried its legacy within him. Against all odds, a human child had flourished on an alien Deathworld, and become something greater than anyone could have imagined.